I'll just give you a few words by way of introduction. Tor Atle has been involved in the diagnosis of fish diseases and parasites in wild and farm salmon since the early 1980s, so many years of experience. And throughout his career, Tor Atle has focused on studies and management of Gyrodactylus salaris, and many of us will know about that and have been aware of the dangers of that getting into Scottish populations for quite some time. But he's also focused on a parasite that causes PKD in wild salmonids, and it's linked to climate change. And we know that's already been mentioned today by James Hunt in relation to the tweed. But Tor Atle has also been involved in work relating to what we refer to as veg rash in Atlantic salmon, and that's something which has been experienced in many rivers in Scotland as well, so of interest there. And he's also been a member of the Norwegian Science Advisory Committee for Atlantic Salmon Management for the last 12 years. But obviously today is going to talk about pink salmon and the Norwegian risk assessment for this species. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Tor Atle, and welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. Can you see my presentation now? Is the presentation? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Well, thank you for inviting me, yeah, I will present the Norwegian action plan against pink salmon. You just heard from Jaakko that this has become a huge problem, and we saw the need for action plan against this pink salmon. We fear that this new invasive species will be a threat to our Atlantic salmon. So I will go into details about the proposed action plan, and I will also give end my talk with a brief consideration after the season 2021. So at the end of November 2020, the Norwegian Environment Agency commissioned NINA and the county governor of Troms and Finnmark to make a proposal for a national action plan against pink salmon. Then we delivered our proposal in the middle of March in 2021, which means a few months before the pink salmon invasion last year. The proposed action plan is written in Norwegian, but for those who are still interested, you can download it from the web address seen in the upper right. We were 5 researchers at NINA who made this action plan together with the county governor of Troms and Finnmark. The table of contents in the action plan corresponds to the commission from the Norwegian Environment Agency, and I will present the most important goals and proposals. And again, remember that this proposal was written before the pink salmon invasion in 2021. The overall goal should be to remove as many pink salmon as possible from Norwegian rivers. Norway has signed the Rio Convention of Biodiversity, and we are obligated to eradicate or reduce the occurrence of invasive species, if possible. It is not possible to eradicate pink salmon in Norwegian rivers as long as they reproduce in Russian rivers, but we can limit the pink salmon occurrence. And if we manage to do this, the potential negative biological impact may be small, and we may prevent negative influences on fishing and other ecosystem services. The knowledge base for asserting that pink salmon has negative impacts in all rivers is inadequate. But in this situation, it is important to use the precautionary principle and not use a wait-and-see attitude. The removal of pink salmon in Troms and Finnmark County in the northernmost Norway may prevent future establishment of pink salmon in Norwegian rivers in general, but also in rivers in other countries further south and west in the Atlantic Ocean. So in the absence of effective and adequate measures, it must be expected that pink salmon will invade and establish in an increasing number of Norwegian rivers, but also, as I just said, in other countries and around the Atlantic Ocean. And if we way to implement measures now, it may be soon too late to act, or that measures will cost much more at a later stage and with a greater risk of undesirable effects. As a knowledge base, we used a lot of international literature, various Norwegian reports, and especially a report published by the Norwegian Scientific Committee for Food and Environment concerning a risk assessment of potential pink salmon impact on biodiversity and farmed fish in Norway. This comprehensive report is actually written in English, and I have sent it to Sean, who can distribute it to those of you that are interested. We also received various data and figures from the Norwegian Scientific Advisory Committee for Atlantic Salmon Management. So in addition to an increase from about 6,600 pink salmon in 2017 to about 20,000 pink salmon in 2019, the catch statistics show that most pink salmon caught in Norwegian rivers have been caught in Troms and Finnmark counties. That is the two northernmost ones. And here the majority of pink salmon has been caught in eastern Finnmark rivers, that is, in our rivers closest to Russia. Thus, eastern Finnmark between River Tana and the Russian border is the core area for pink salmon in Norway. And therefore the action plan focus on rivers in this area. When we wrote the action plan proposal almost a year ago, we got information that the pink salmon invasion in 2021 could be larger than previous years. Thus, we also wrote that measures should be planned in rivers in western Finnmark and Troms, and perhaps also in rivers in Nordland County further south. When giving priority to rivers, we were asked to not only consider previous catches of pink salmon, but also considered the vulnerability of Atlantic salmon, sea trout, and sea char in each river. In addition, we should consider the occurrence and status of the red-listed freshwater pearl mussel in each river. As pearl mussel larvae have a parasitic stage on either salmon or trout, yearlings or par, the pearl mussel can be further threatened if pink salmon cause a decrease in these native salmonid species. And due to their short stay in the rivers, pink salmon yearlings cannot serve as host for the pearl mussel larvae. This table shows the overall status of the salmonid population in the rivers of eastern Finnmark. The text is small, but just focus on the colors. To the right, the green colors means that the status of the native salmonid species is generally good, although there are exceptions, such as the status of the Atlantic salmon population in the River Tana and the River Karpelva. And for several reasons, the huge Tana River, as you just heard, it was not given priority in the action plan. And all in all, the suggested priority of rivers was mainly based on previous catches and occurrence of pink salmon. We categorized the rivers according to several properties, and we assessed the properties against which methods can be used in practice. Several methods have previously been assessed for the removal of escaped farm salmon in our rivers, and these methods can also be used to remove pink salmon. A floating trap or similar near the outlet of the rivers is the best method to remove pink salmon in our rivers. Native anadromous species get minimal damage and can be released upstream the trap, while pink salmon and escaped farm salmon can be removed. In some rivers, a trap is not appropriate, and here different nets and other gear should be used. And in rivers with low numbers of pink salmon, harponing and rod fishing may be sufficiently effective. And here you can see a 40-meter broad floating trap covering the cross-section of the river Etneelva on the west coast of Norway. And migrating salmonids can be removed from the chamber of the trap and native salmonids released undamaged upstream. The action plan proposes the establishment of a national competence group. This group should have a regional affiliation, and for pink salmon, it is logical that the responsibility is placed with the governor, county governor of Troms and Finnmark. It is proposed that the national competence group is broadly composed of people with administrative responsibilities, expertise with various measures, knowledge of the development and use of capture equipment, and biological expertise. And now this national competence group is under establishment. We listed several tasks that the national competence group should be responsible for, such as make regional plans for capture of pink salmon, assist with coordination of measures regionally, assist with priority and choice of measures locally, recommend equipment for capture of pink salmon in rivers, information about pink salmon control, both locally and regionally, create a plan for waste management of pink salmon, which you can imagine has been a huge problem in 2021, with more than 200,000 kilos of salmon caught. The national group should register and systematize pink salmon capture numbers, systematize knowledge and experience with various measures against pink salmon, and a lot more. I will not go into all the details. But the action plan also emphasized that local affiliation and involvement are very important. Locals should be involved in the planning and implementation of measures, and they should be paid for the work they do. The work cannot be based on voluntary efforts, as it has mainly been done so far. We also estimated the cost for catching and monitoring pink salmon in the 15 rivers in eastern Finnmark the next 5 years. 15 floating traps were estimated to cost about 12 million Norwegian kroner, while it will cost approximately 3 million kroner to run them each of the next 3 odd years. But as even year pink salmon also occurs in our rivers, it is proposed that the trap should be operated also in even number years, with limited monitoring to follow up to follow the development of even year pink salmon. We do fear that these populations could increase too. And this cost was estimated to about 750,000 Norwegian kroner in even years. And then we also suggested that 5 rivers in each of the 3 counties, Nordland, Troms and Finnmark, are selected and follow up with spawning fish counts in the autumn, odd years, and then fry counts in the spring in even years at a cost about 300,000 Norwegian kroner each year. And actually, just a few weeks after we suggested this, the money was given by the government. And in the action plan, we also mention a lot of knowledge needs and research that should be done. As said earlier, our knowledge is very limited, and many questions have been raised, such as what is the dispersal potential of pink salmon? How do pink salmon find their way back to the rivers? It was mentioned earlier here that they necessarily don't come back to the rivers where they are hatched. And how much area of a river does pink salmon use? As Jaakko said, they don't spread out in the whole river system. They select some areas, and what is the basis for that? Do pink salmon yearling affect yearlings and part of native salmonid species? It has been argued that they don't, but some studies indicate that they do. And how will pink salmon affect the access and use of ecosystem services in Norway, in the Norwegian Atlantic salmon rivers? Some sport fishers try to avoid these rivers now because they don't want to catch these small pink salmon compared to the large Atlantic salmons. I've been up there and fished for Atlantic salmon and pink salmon, and in 2017 I caught these two male salmon. This gave me the opportunity to compare their gonads. It has been said that pink salmon is like sex machines, and I can confirm that. Here you can see that the pink salmon male gonads fill almost the whole entire abdominal cavity. And to give more space, the other internal organs are significantly reduced. These organs, such as gut, livers, and spleen, are not going to be used again anyway, as pink salmon die after spawning. And here is just an example of the very high fecundity of a small female. The eggs of these small females are larger than those in the much larger Atlantic salmon. And as Jaakko also mentioned, international cooperation is needed to control the occurrence of pink salmon. The premise is that the countries agree on the consequences of pink salmon and on the future goals. There is also a need for exchange of experience and knowledge, both between authorities and science. The pink salmon invasion in Norwegian rivers in 2021 was significantly greater than 2 years earlier, as Jaakko said. We had this in mind when we wrote the action plan proposal, but the invasion was much larger than we had imagined. About 110,000 pink salmon were caught in the Norwegian rivers, and about 40,000 were caught in the marine fisheries. Still, thousands of pink salmon spawned in our rivers, especially in large rivers such as Tana and River Alta, where we are not able to catch pink salmon efficiently. Even if pink salmon were caught in the rivers along the whole Norwegian coast, as seen in the figure to the right, 98% of the catches were in Troms and Finnmark, the two northernmost counties. Therefore, we will focus on this area in future increased efforts to remove pink salmon from Norwegian fjords and rivers. And based on the invasion in 2021, parts of the Norwegian action plan should or could be revised. Obviously, there is a need for significantly larger investments in the purchase and annual operation of traps and monitoring in many more rivers than what we proposed in the Norwegian action plan against pink salmon. Thank you for listening.